you going to talk or you want me to?
You look like
You opened your mouth. Yeah, well, anyhow, welcome everybody. So tonight we have a guest researcher. We don't just do a lot of just regular researchers, do we?
No.
But this is cool because we're doing a regular. What do I mean by regular? I mean, I don't think Kevin's famous. He might be.
But he's doing real research, field research.
Yes. And I was with, so the person that we've got on tonight, I was with over the weekend out doing research. So that's how I met Kevin. So they call him K2 apparently. People know him by K2.
K2.
Yeah. K2. That's a mountain.
I want a nickname.
Yeah. We'll call you K1. Okay, so, and then we've got Adam Colt on tonight, and Adam was also with. And the reason Adam's going to come on is because 4:30 in the morning, and of course, we didn't have any Bigfoot activity that whole trip, but 4:30 in the morning, Adam gets up to go to the bathroom, wakes me up. I just fallen asleep too, you know, when you're out doing research, you stay up early, late.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'd even gone down to even, get in my sleeping bag till 2:30. And then, of course, it was cold and you got to wait for your bag to warm up. And then I had to pee, so then I got up. So now it's like 3:30, and then some guy in this near the tent started his car up to warm his car. Might have even been Kevin. So that kept me up. So I finally doze off and then Adam wakes me up.
Oh, of course.
So Adam wakes me up and and he's saying, you need to come outside. There's like dancing lights in the trees and in the sky. And I'm like, oh God. Okay. So I get out of my sleeping bag again and I'm too tired to even put a coat on. It's probably 38, 40 degrees. So I put my shoes on and I go outside and I'll tell you, I was not let down. I've never seen anything like it. And Adam's going to describe it. And, he'll back me up on what we saw because it was just weird. I don't know what category even to put it in. Was it a UFO? Was it a bunch of UFOs? Was it some other phenomena? I don't know. So anyhow. So that's what's going on. So back to business. We really hope people will subscribe. Any new listeners to the Untold Radio Network. We've got total of 9 shows. The last one, the 9th, will be dropping soon within the next week or so. And that's Down South Anomalies, about Antarctica and Africa and all the weirdness that goes on in the Southern Hemisphere. But we have some really amazing shows. And it was fact, a couple of them are literally my favorite shows. Which is cool. I mean, actually, one of them is wide open. I really enjoy listening to it, yeah. And then there's Bigfoot Influencers, which is a blast to listen to. Pine Island Research.
Mysterious Library. Mysterious Library.
Yeah, Mysterious Library, Talking Weird. I listen to all of them. They're good. But anyhow, so 4:30, I told you about this weird thing. Adam's going to come on here in just a little bit. But before we do that, I came across something really weird. Now, Alex, when you were little, you never caught critters, like salamanders, toads. Would you even touch a frog when you were a kid?
I was probably terrified. Yeah. Or just,
But your brother did. I know Blaine did.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He had tons.
But I remember one time, because it becomes a problem sometimes. It was you and me and Blaine were out at Osceola State Park in Wisconsin, right? And Blaine goes to me, we get out of the car, he goes, Dad, if I catch a bird, can I keep it? And of course, I'm like, well, of course. He's not going to catch a bird. He's like 3 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. 5 minutes later, you two come back, and of course, Blaine's holding the bird.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
So he's holding this bird, and I'm like, oh, my God. And he doesn't even remember where he got it. Or, it was some baby bird that had fallen out of its nest.
Yeah.
It was really cute. It had long legs. I didn't even know what it was. So, of course, I'm thinking, oh, God. So we take it home, drive back home with it. I end up raising this thing, with Blaine. He helped. Fed it waxworms, I think, was its main staple, mushed up different kinds of insects, which it relished. It got bigger and bigger. I would even take it to work, to the office, right? And it would fly around. I was laying on my shoulder. It was getting bigger and bigger. And I was like, what in the hell bird is this? Finally, I realized, I think it was a meadowlark. And it was just growing, just proportionate because its legs were really long. Anyhow, we named it Stretch. And then one day, your mother lit a candle.
Oh, no.
Stretch saw the candle, flew off my shoulder, and landed on the candle.
On it.
And the candle was up high, and I couldn't get at him quick enough. That was the end of Stretch.
Wait, he went up?
He went up, yeah.
Oh, no.
If you can.
I don't. You guys kept flames. That from us.
Stretch went up in flames. It was sad.
Oh, no.
We put a lot of work into a bird like that. And, of course, we're attached to it.
Yeah.
The plan was to let it go. I'm sure it would have done fine, when it became an adult. Or you do the halfway thing, you put it on the deck and it flies and comes back for food if it needs to. Anyhow, moving on. Another thing that I used to catch when I was a kid was grasshoppers. Tons of them. I don't know why. They're to me nowadays, they're gross.
Yeah.
They just land on you and you don't know what they're going to do, and they'll leap into your mouth. They're not the brightest insect in the world.
No, they're not very bright.
And this year there were millions of them. It was kind of a plague here in my town. You drive your bike, and I'd go for a bike ride every day, and you drive your bike, and these things are just millions of them hopping out of your way. And for the most part, they hop out of the way. But about every mile or so, one lands on your face or your head, or, you just got to flick it off. Some of them get pretty big. But the reason I bring it up is because I sent you a piece of footage, which at first I didn't even know was real. I had no idea it was even real, Alex, until I really did research, because I looked up grasshoppers, because I think they had listed it wrong as a grasshopper. And then I looked it up, and it was not a grasshopper. It was a katydid, which is a relative, right?
Yeah.
And do you have that footage?
Yes, I do.
So let's go ahead and we got to play this, because this thing is freaky. If I saw one of these land on me. Listen to that thing. Sounds like a Glock cocking. That thing's what, 11 inches long? 10 inches?
It's huge.
It's got to be 10 inches long. Yeah, it's nuts. Anyhow, okay. That's a katydid. And then I realized some of them, that one's from Malaysia, the East. But there's some in Texas that are almost that big, and they have these hooked legs. Well, they'll actually cut you with their legs. Are you even listening to me, Alex?
I got another clip I'm pulling up. You were talking about how they could cut you. They got huge legs.
God. You're just, yeah, okay. What? Do we have another clip?
We do. There was, you had 3 clips. One of them didn't load. But there's another one where this thing, like you were talking about, has huge legs.
Oh, that's the Texas one. You can put that up. It's pretty interesting for anybody not interested in these things. Yeah. Well, there's one that I found. I think the one that you saw.
Look at that thing.
I think that's still the Asian one. That's an Asian one from the Philippines or Malaysia. Yeah, that's the same one. And that one's small compared to the other one. But there's some in Texas, katydids, that get like 7-8 inches long too. And they have a mean claw. This guy caught one, and it was like literally cutting his hand while he was holding it. So anyhow, just more fun things in the woods and more food sources for what we're going to talk about tonight. Bigfoot.
We did have one more clip. I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about that. You had a clip of a guy
doing what?
I
That's
don't
got to
know,
be the.
the fish in the streets clip.
Oh, then well, I haven't even talked about that yet. Were you just going to jump ahead and just show footage?
No. I ruined your segue.
Oh my God, I'd say. Anyhow, we're not even going to have time for that because we haven't had him on.
Should we bring him on?
No, not yet. Soon, in a minute. Not yet. So I'm just looking here about grasshoppers. You know, there's 11,000 species of those things, and that includes, crickets, grasshoppers, katydids, and cockroaches. They're relative.
I didn't know there was that many of them.
Yeah, 11,000. They are definitely going to inherit the earth, no doubt. For sure they will. And we've all got, I don't know if you have a cockroach story, but I do. Real quick. I was in Philadelphia. I got up in the middle of the night because I had a box of donuts on my nightstand. And I grabbed a donut out of there and I'm getting ready to take a bite out of it. And I look and there's somebody looking at me. It's a freaking cockroach.
No.
It's looking at me right in the eye and it's huge. And it's on top of my donut. And I'm like, okay, enough of that. Anyhow.
I got a cockroach story.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, so we were in like South Carolina and we were on like a ghost tour. And so we're all going through the thing. It's late at night, through the city. And my buddy, he screams and everyone turns and they're like, oh my God, did you see a ghost? No, he saw a cockroach.
One needs a drum roll. Do you still do drum rolls? You haven't done one of those terrible, tasteless drum rolls in a long time. No. Okay. Anyhow, but I was just going to go through a really quick list about interesting things about grasshoppers.
Yes.
Why? Because they're a cool creature. They're cool. I don't want to be around them. Grasshoppers have ears in their belly. They hear through their ears that are in their belly.
That is so weird.
Grasshoppers and locusts are one. Locusts are one and the same. And apparently, when grasshoppers start swarming, they'll change color and behavior and turn into locusts.
I didn't know that.
That's the feedback I get from you. I didn't know that. Okay. Anyhow, grasshoppers are an important source of protein. People have been eating grasshoppers for a century, but I just saw a thing where that chitin, the shell of the bugs, apparently our bodies don't do real well on that. So
No.
Grasshoppers existed long before the dinosaurs, 250 million years ago. Grasshoppers were around.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah. So they were hopping 259 million years ago. Can you imagine how big they were back then? You could probably ride the damn thing.
Get a saddle.
Grasshoppers make music just like crickets. Like the katydid that you even saw. All grasshoppers make music.
Why do they do that?
Why do you think? You're a big boy.
Attract a mate?
Of course. They don't do it for fun. They do it to get, you know what? Okay. I think that's all the great facts. But the one that really surprised me that they actually will change color and behavior to form swarms and become locusts. I had no idea that. That was super interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know they could transform like that.
Yeah, they transform. They become like the zombie gang, and they just eat everything in their path. So apparently grasshoppers can't hear pitch very well. So it probably wouldn't do them much good to listen to music.
Yeah, well, I mean, judging by that katydid, I get it.
Yeah. Grasshoppers are herbivores.
They're herbivores?
You know what that means, right?
Yeah.
What?
They eat herbs.
Yeah. They're herbivores. They eat plants.
Yes.
Yeah, not herbs. Okay. But apparently they do scavenge dead insects. So they can be carnivorous. And some katydids are completely carnivorous. They eat meat.
So are some of them like omnivores? We eat both of them?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be an omnivore. So grasshoppers jump. They don't really like use their muscles. They like wind them back.
That's how I walk.
Yeah, they wind them back and then they bing like a spring. They let them go and they can jump 10 feet.
10 feet?
Everybody needs to know how far a grasshopper can jump.
Great.
That's like the longest they can jump. Normally, most of them only can jump 4 feet.
I thought it was safe on the sidewalk, but I guess not.
No. Most grasshoppers are only 2 inches.
But they can jump 10 feet.
No, some can jump 10 feet. Not all of them.
Imagine a 2-inch grasshopper jump 10 feet.
No, it can't. Some can. Grasshoppers can bite, but they rarely do. Doesn't that get a drum roll?
I mean, I was already terrified of grasshoppers, but now that they can bite me, I don't know.
Yeah, they bite. They hurt. They generally don't break your skin. Okay, enough about them damn things. Let's bring Adam on.
Adam, how we doing?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. I love the backdrop.
I would think we should be able to, only because you are an audio expert.
I know. I'm using a different mic though. I can't check the levels. So.
Could you imagine if you came on and you had bad audio? You're like the audio god.
No, that would be bad.
I mean, TV shows go to you to get their audio perfect.
Exactly.
So,
all right.
I love your back. What's with the background? That's pretty cool. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, I just threw it together before the show here.
Yeah, now do us.
Yeah.
No.
You're looking sharp tonight.
Thanks. Yeah, I decided last year to name my recording studio Sasquatch Studios. So
did you really?
Yeah, that's my new endeavor.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're gonna be leaning on you for something.
I'm gonna add to your grasshopper story here real quick.
Oh, okay.
So the grasshoppers in Colorado that I grew up with have wings, and not only do they hop, but then they glide, and so they can do like 20, 30 feet.
Well, they have wings here too, Adam.
I know. So not just 10 feet. So
no, I said just a pure hop, not a fly.
Okay. Alex,
I forgot about that they have wings.
Anywhere.
Yes.
I didn't know grasshoppers could have wings, period.
They all have wings.
They spit like tobacco juice on them.
Oh yeah. That's why we used to catch them. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. And you'd look at the juice because they do that under stress.
Yeah.
And of course, 5-year-old kid grabbing your head and squeezing is kind of stressful. So they start producing the thing. We always called it tobacco juice.
Yep.
Guess what the scientists call it?
What?
Tobacco juice. I love it.
Awesome.
And apparently it has a bad smell.
Never got that close.
And a bad taste.
Yeah.
And it's digested enzymes. See?
There you go.
I know my
I now know more about a grasshopper than I ever wanted to know.
Yeah.
There you go.
Anyhow, so we've got Kevin on tonight, but I thought before we bring Kevin on, and you met Kevin.
Yeah. Kevin's awesome.
Kevin were there.
Exactly. The 4 Kevins.
4 Kevins.
Yeah.
And we were there with Levi Makovic, who wrote the book, The Sasquatch Paradox.
Yep.
Levi's an amazing guy. This was kind of his area because he had an encounter with acorns being thrown at them. And I think Kevin was there. Maybe Kevin could tell the story. But you woke me up.
I did.
I wasn't happy, was I?
No, you were not happy at all.
What did I say?
Well, like you said, you just gotten to sleep, so you were really cranky.
Did I say damn it?
I think you let a couple swear words come out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's the middle of the night. I climb out of bed. I have to go. And so I'm walking into the woods, and I just notice this light flickering. And I'm like, oh, that's unusual. And then I look over, and I'm like, it blinks, and then it moves. And I'm like disappears and then reappears like 15, 20 feet to the right. Yep. And I'm like, what is that? And then it did it again. And it was another 15 feet to the right. And then all of a sudden the trees just lit up. And I'm just like, whoa, this is interesting. So then I knocked on the tent. I'm like, shook the tent actually. They said, Doug, Doug, are you awake? And you're like, yeah, I am now. I just got to sleep. Why are you waking me up? And I said, where? I said, what direction is the freeway? And you told me, and I'm just like, okay. And I'm like, you gotta come out here. You gotta see this. And the lights had a pattern. They basically went from left to right, started really bright, and then dimmed out, and then moved and bright and dimmed out. And by the time Doug got out of the tent, they had moved like, I don't know, 200 yards to the right.
And they were going both directions when I came out.
Yeah, it was crazy. And when they lit up the trees, that was the weird part.
That's what I didn't understand, because not only was the sky lighting up, you could see, I mean, there were places up in those tall Norway pines where it was this clear sky, and you could see them there too. And I'm like, what? I didn't know what category to put them in. UFOs. They certainly were not northern lights.
Yeah, it totally reminded me of Close Encounters, and I was waiting to hear the do 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 do, you know. And so the lights were just flashing in sequence, and then just the bright light in the trees. So I'll back you up.
They were very random.
Well, I saw the sequence repeat. So
no, I know that. But when you came out, when we were out there together,
and
you were standing to the right of me about 10, 20 feet.
Yeah.
And you couldn't even see what I was seeing. It was just really weird.
Well, because I was looking where it used to be. It had moved. And when you said, look over here. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's where it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
very weird. I don't know.
Very weird.
What do you think do you think those were UFOs or?
Well, I was going to go investigate, but I only had my undies and t-shirt on and no cell phone or wallet. And I was walking towards it and you're like, get back in the tent. Don't go out there.
Oh, you were going to go take a walk in the woods in your undies. And I'm like, what are you doing? At that point, it's like, I had seen enough.
Yeah.
But you know what was weird? Neither of us pulled our cell phones out.
Yeah. You know, I've shot pictures of the moon and they never turn out right. You know, lights in the woods just don't look good on cell phones.
Yeah.
They're just blurry little specks. So, but you and I both saw it.
Yeah.
So don't know what to categorize it as. Just another anomaly.
Yeah. And it was, what would I say we did out there? We did a lot of e-biking the night. Yeah, that was cool. Very dark out there. And that particular night, I don't think there was a moon. The tree canopy was so thick. It was not coming through.
Yeah. I do have, if your listeners can send you a picture of what I'm going to describe, I did see something cross the trail when we were e-biking.
Oh,
it was like the size of triple the size of a normal jackrabbit. It had the shape of a rabbit. It was pure snow white, but it didn't have a tail and it didn't hop. It scurried, but it was really quick and it ran right across the trail.
How big was it?
I'd say it was 30 pounds, maybe 35 pounds. So
that's pretty damn big. I mean,
it was big.
That's coyote size.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to guess, I would say it was like an albino badger or something like that. But
there's no such thing.
I don't know. That's what it looked like to me. I don't know.
Albino badger.
Yeah.
You sure it wasn't like some little other creature?
Nope. It had fur. I saw the fur and it was.
Could it have been a juvenile Bigfoot? Juvenile Bigfoot on all fours?
I didn't see any legs. It was the legs seemed to be underneath the creature and it was scurrying. Okay. Yeah.
Was it chunky?
It was bulbous. It was roundish. It looked kind of like the shape of a back of a bunny rabbit, kind of.
I'm wondering if it wasn't a albino raccoon.
I don't know, but I mean, I've seen lots of wild rabbits, and wild rabbits are thin. They don't eat that much, and they're fast, and they hop. But this didn't move like a wild rabbit. So, yeah.
Oh well, whatever. All right, we got to get to Kevin. Do you want to?
Kevin,
you can hang out in the back room. I might even call you up again, or you can go wherever you got to go.
All right. Well, we're just eating some pizza and drinking some Prosecco here, celebrating our day off. So
good.
All right. Well, you guys have fun.
All right.
And Kevin's amazing. I'm glad you got him on tonight. So get to Kevin.
Should be.
Take care.
So, all right. Thanks, Adam. Thank you. Bye. Okay, I'm coming. There he is, Kevin.
Kevin,
hey,
how
fellas.
you doing?
Good. How are you? How do I sound? Okay.
You sound
Yeah.
good.
Good.
You've got one of those deep voices.
Yeah, I've been told that I have a radio voice, so
Yes,
we'll see
you
how
do.
that adds up.
So how many podcasts have you done?
Just one,
Just
one on
one.
the forest fleur. I highly suggest listeners and viewers to listen to Emily. She's a wealth of knowledge, kind of the next generation, I think, if you will, of field researchers. So she's impressive, yeah, for sure.
Very cool. Would you have been mad if we'd have woke you up to see those lights?
No. And I don't think you would have made me mad if you said, "Hey, there's a 2-inch grasshopper." I used to work in a very popular beverage company, and I'd have to go around to certain stores and this was in Texas, that would have mass quantities of grasshoppers, and you could actually smell the grasshoppers in these different locations just because of the quantity of grasshopper that was in there. Kind of soily, dingy shoe, sweaty smell. So I'm derailing my intro.
No, that may be. But the question, back to the question, I was thinking of waking Levi up and waking you guys up, and I thought, I'm just gonna enjoy whatever I'm looking at.
I think I missed the fact that this happened over camp.
Oh yeah, it happened that night.
I would say though that at about 2 or 3, someone had started their vehicle and almost like took off from the campsite. Not one of our campers, but another camper took off. Could it be a reflection of that vehicle leaving? Well, I don't know. I would have to ask you what time.
Well, at one point I saw like 20 lights at a time. So I doubt it. Yeah, there's always those things they call air inversions, where the air can invert and become a mirror.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it's always possible that this was just some kind of traffic, but I thought, well, if it's faraway traffic, it would be headlight colored, and these were not headlight colored. They were, I don't know really what I looked at.
But your head was outside the tent, right?
I was out in the woods.
Oh, no
I'd gotten up and.
Damn. Yeah. I wish you, I mean, those are type of things where, I mean, whether it's lights or whether it's Bigfoot, I mean, wake someone up, let the populace see what you're seeing, and we can all take angles on it. I think it's good next time.
I just felt bad because, you guys went to bed a little earlier than I did. I stayed up with John a little bit and talked. And
sure. Yeah.
And then finally, when that car started and took off, that woke me up. And then when I finally got to sleep, then that woke me up.
Which was weird in and of itself. It was like 2, 3 in the morning, it seemed.
Yeah.
And it just started up and took off.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. Whatever. Okay, so let's go back now, way back.
Sure.
You were telling me some pretty interesting stories. It was you and your father.
Yeah.
And
Kevin C.
I would like to just revisit some of those because I only remember so much of it anyhow, because it's just, when you're on these little expeditions, you're an information overload.
That's right. Yeah, for sure.
But I just, I knew they were really super cool stories, and I know you'd like to share them.
Yeah. To take everyone back, our listeners back. I don't know if I'd call it was hard delivering my bio to you both, candidly. I don't know if I would call myself a field researcher, an advocate, an enthusiast. But here I am, right? So I've been doing this since about 2013. I would have done it earlier if I could. One of the first, back when I had my Me-Millennium computers, if you all listening remember Me-Millennium Windows computer. One of the first websites I went to was the bfro.net website. First website went to find out more about Bigfoot. Like, is anyone doing this? Like, is there a thing for this? Speeding that up a few years, that's about 2013. One of my first expedition with the BFRO to New Mexico, to a place called Los Alamos, which was in New Mexico. That was, I went with my dad. I brought him along on this journey of mine. really got the itch for it as a kid.
Well,
but, yeah,
just
go ahead.
hang on. I just want to interrupt you. I want to back up. Just why were they doing an expedition there? Can you explain?
Yeah, there had been in New Mexico. There's plenty of Native American places like Monkey Hollow, Monkey Mountain, very primal named mountains in that region.
So there's a long history of
There
sightings.
seemed to be, yeah. There seemed to be.
Okay.
There seemed to be, yeah.
But have there been any recent sightings?
You know,
When
I
you
don't.
guys
At
went
that
out
time, there had to been. I'll put it this way: there had to have been a reason why that organization decided to go to that specific place to bring 15-ish people from their homes into this region, right? So
I don't think Matt would go to a dead area.
I don't know. I mean, maybe he would for different research purposes, but I would say there was a reason why we were brought to Los Alamos. I think that they all have their specific hotspots, if you will, right? So we were brought to Los Alamos, and typically on these expeditions, you're there for like three days, 3 nights type of thing. 3 days, 2 nights, whatever it might be. The first night we went out, we all kind of gathered around a fire. And what was interesting about that is I remember kind of looking out and being a first timer, and just seeing like little red dots everywhere, just little red dots. Couldn't quite, and I remember even tapping my dad and saying, "Hey, are you seeing like little red dots everywhere?"
Wow.
And he was just like, "Yeah, I thought it was just my eyes playing tricks." I'm like, "No, I'm seeing like these pinpoints of red dots everywhere." Just something to take note of, right? I mean, nothing out of the ordinary necessarily, but just like, okay, that's different. Maybe we're just not out in the woods enough. Maybe it's the fire. Maybe it's XYZ.
Okay, well, let me ask you a couple of questions about these red dots. How far away? How big? How bright?
Oh man, about 30 yards away.
Okay.
Imagine your tip of your finger is like a red little light.
Okay.
And just, if this is a tree, just doing this.
Oh, okay.
Just kind of
like bobbing in and out, moving.
Bobbing in and out everywhere, though. Everywhere. Multiple.
How many were there?
10.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. But I didn't know what I was experiencing. So I just kind of left it to, okay, I'm just getting used to the woods. I'm not out here at that point, not out there too much. Maybe this is normal. Maybe this is my eyes regulating with the fire and everything else that's happening. So there was a plan that night. There was a plan that night, and it was to go out. And the first night that we went out, kind of broke up into groups, and it was actually the first night that I heard a walking in the woods, but yet everyone in our group was accounted for. Everyone in everyone else's group was accounted for, except you hear this crunch, crunch, crunch. So much so that it made the next guy next to me a little nervous, and he was starting to show signs of being nervous, So then the leader, if you will, of our group was like, "Hey, is anyone walking in the woods? Why would anyone be walking in the woods right now? We said that we're going to these little locations. We're just going to stop walking." Everyone kind of said, "No, that's not us, not us, not us." So then it was like, this is crazy. Am I truly hearing a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch walk in the woods right now? I mean, it was lumberous enough, buzzword. It was lumberous enough that it was like, damn, this is nuts.
But what's going on with the red lights? Are they gone?
They're gone at this point. No
Alex,
red lights.
Alex, can you put Amy Boo's comment up? So apparently you're not alone. Well, hopefully we'll get back to... So, okay. I asked you the darn question. I didn't even hear the answer. Were the lights gone when you heard the crunching and the walking?
So when I saw the lights, we were all in a circle, about 20 of us,
Okay.
Doug, in a circle around a fire. And then, you know, I think everyone's kind of doing this, like they're listening to people talk, but you know, they're looking around. They're seeing what's happening.
Was anybody else seeing those lights?
My dad was,
Oh,
and I can't remember if we had said, "Hey, is anyone else seeing this? Like these red like dots?" But it was happening. At least he corroborated the fact that it was happening. It wasn't just my eyes, right? Once we moved on to go to separate groups the first night, that's when the red dots stopped, and like you couldn't even see your hand in your face. That's how dark it was.
Interesting.
To continue the you know, you heard this crunching.
Yep.
That proximity wise, within 100 yards. I mean, this was relatively close, and it was just one singular. I don't mean to be cliche, but like bipedal walking sound, right? And that was the first night, and that was kind of all that happened the first night. The second night is where, as you know, when we were hanging out this past weekend, and that was a different approach. That was different groups. We decided that there was this actually like where our tent was posted up. There was kind of like this path, almost like you can consider it like a logging road, but like this path on the hill. And for those of you who haven't gone to Los Alamos or are unfamiliar with that territory or the landscape, it's kind of dry, deserty, but yet foresty, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a Colorado, just temperate climate, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there was kind of like a dirty road that we decided, okay, there's 5 of us, again, 1 from the organization, and we're going to go together. His name was, am I allowed to say first names? Is that okay? His name was Bill. Yeah. So Bill was like 6'7", 6'8". He was a tall man. And he and this other fellow decided to go around another kind of side path. And there was those 2, and then it was myself, my dad, and this other fellow around my age at the time. But we're all around the same height. I'm 6'1", my dad's maybe like 5'10", and then this other fellow at the time, Jason was his name, and he was about 5'10", 5'11". So the height's important, I'll get to reason why that is. So it's us 3. We're walking down this path the second night. So quiet, Doug and Alex, that you could actually hear your pulse beat in your ears. And at that point, there were no crickets, no flies, grasshopper, nothing. I mean, it was quiet.
So you guys are a long ways away from a road.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, I mean, we almost getting into this place, Doug. My daddy was even concerned about falling off of the cliff because these were worse than old logging roads, if that makes sense. I mean, that's how kind of treacherous actually it was. To that point, so we split up. You got Bill and this other fellow, older fellow. They went around another path, had no idea where they were, but they were not near us, and they were behind us, and they had taken off. We were heading deep into this kind of following this path that seemed to go around and down, but we didn't know where down was. We didn't know where around was.
Right.
We come up and we decided to do this type of technique that we just kind of came up on the fly, but I feel like it's important to share because I know sometimes the community is pretty secretive, candidly, about what we do and how we tactfully do things. But I'm going to be very open about that and share that. So we kind of did this thing where we would walk in a line, or at least maybe somewhat close to each other, but then every tree shadow, because it was a full moon, I candidly think that full moons are good luck. You might hear otherwise in different realms, but I tend to think it's good because perhaps Bigfoot, Sasquatch can see you. You can't see them necessarily because they're behind a tree, but at the same time, you still can see because that moon is so bright. You don't need flashlights at this point.
Yeah.
If the trees are open enough. So we decided to kind of stop in the shadows, and those shadows were every like 20 to 30 feet ish, substantial, shadows. So where we would walk a little bit, stop in a shadow, listen, 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Walk a little bit, stop in the shadows. We did this a couple times. And then there was one time where we stopped in the shadow, and it was kind of on this hill. That was about 45 degree. I mean, it was a little steep. And you just one pebble just trickled down right where we stopped. And we didn't fret. We didn't, turn on flashlights. What's that? We just kind of actually looked the opposite direction. We all kind of huddled and said, "Did everyone hear that?" Yeah. You heard a pebble, right? Yep, we heard a pebble. Okay. And it's at it's at my 3 o'clock. Was it at your 9 o'clock? Yeah, it was. Okay, great. Okay. Should we continue? Yeah, let's continue and see what happens. What pains me to say is at this time, because we were so novice, we didn't have audio recording, we didn't have thermal, we didn't have night vision. It was our own ears and our headlamps.
But at this point, it sounded like at least externally, you guys were composed and calm. Internally, was there a lot of adrenaline? I mean, were you afraid?
No, because I think we were ready at that point, but if you wait 5 more minutes, Alex, there's a point where I start to question all existence. So we get down to, we're like, okay, let's keep going. And Doug, I kind of portrayed this sound to you, but this path kind of went down to the right and angled to the left to a point where we didn't know where we were going, but let's see what happens. I'm going to grab my microphone and tried to reenact this sound that I heard as we got maybe 50 feet closer.
Please do.
And this thing was that, how did that sound? Was that okay?
That's perfect. Yeah, I mean, it sounded very fluttery.
Yeah.
There's some very big vocal cords are vibrating.
Yes.
Very bassy.
Yes, super bassy. But what was nuts was it wasn't close. This thing was far away. And Doug, I think you've mentioned, whether that the specific sound that kind of vibrates.
Yeah, infrasound.
Infrasound, thank you. It was almost that at such a level where we all heard it. We stopped in our tracks, but yet you could feel your chest. You could feel your clothes kind of shimmer.
Yeah.
And we were frozen.
So, for sure it was subsonic.
Does subsonic necessarily mean that you couldn't hear it?
Well, it's what you're going to feel. No. You can have a sound in both ranges. Mm-hmm. One of the most unique thing about Bigfoot sounds that we're learning is that it's multiple tones, multiple hertz going on all at the same time.
Yeah. It was something that I had never experienced before, and I've been to a lot of shows. To the point where I knew something was distant, but yet rumbling my chest.
Wow.
Rumbling my dad's chest, rumbling Jason's chest.
Wow. So everybody's experiencing the same thing.
Everyone's experiencing this. Everyone hears this deep, and again, cliche vocab word, guttural sound, right? Yeah. To the point
sounds
where,
like it reminds me of the Predator movie.
Yeah, and that's more like
a little bit.
Like you kind of hear these like dolphin sounds within that. This was just bass, and it's not like. And I had to go back. It's not like a bear. Bear almost sounds to me like a big garbage can, like almost like a dumpster being dragged across concrete. Cat isn't there. Wolf isn't
A
there.
bear can do that kind of a fluctuating sound.
Mhm.
And I've had it done to me, but generally they're in very close proximity. They're not going to do it unless they're 5 feet from you when you see them, because they're trying to intimidate you.
Yeah, I'm not going to discredit that. This just was far. You could kind of pinpoint. This is around the corner that we're trying to get to, and it's not having it. It's the sensation and the immediate warning sign that my body and my mind gave was, don't come down here.
Was there anything that tripped that sound? Was there somebody relieving themselves at a tree when that started? Was there anything that happened out of the ordinary with your group?
I think what was the passing the threshold, if you will, was we're going to do like a little pebble and see what happens. And I'm acting as if I'm a Sasquatch, right? And these beings aren't listening to my little pebble as to stop here. And once we kept walking, that was like, okay, we're going to have to amp it up a little bit. That's all of this mind games, if you will, that I was interpreting at the time. And my dad was feeling the same thing. Jason was feeling the same thing.
So what you have to do?
What's that?
It's what a person has to do. I mean, you have to rationalize. You go crazy.
Yeah, and so even on this pebble thing, it was like we all kind of looked up and glanced, but like we didn't see anything.
Yeah,
we didn't see any shadows, but it was just weird enough. At that point, once we all got stopped in our tracks because of this rumbling, guttural sound, we said we got to call Bill. And so let's go back. Let's get Bill. We walked backwards. We radioed for Bill, and he says, we finally got him in range. And so, again, he's not in front of us. No one is in front of us to our knowledge because they're all on the other side of the mountains. There's all these different paths. So we decided to go backwards and to get Bill. As we're walking backwards to get Bill, we knew which path that he was on. He said, we kind of said, hey, there's this path and it kind of goes around this bend. Like, how far are you from around this bend? And then he replied back like, I'm about, like 500 feet, maybe at that. Like, and at that point, we started walking. I said, and I had him on the radio and I said, Bill, you just turn on a headlamp. Like, I see you, but you're not around. Like, are you in the woods? And he replies back, no, we're like on the path right now. So, and I shared with you this, Doug, where what I had seen was like this, maybe 50 feet into the woods, about 20 yards, 30 yards into the woods, this like grapefruit size, amberish light kind of turn on and then turn off, to which made me think, someone just turned on their headlamp.
Yeah,
because that's protocol with different folks you're out with, is to turn on your red headlamp. But that's not Bill. That's not Bill's partner, and this was off path.
And it's amber. It's definitely amber.
Yeah, I mean, let me see. I don't know if you can see. So this is my microphone. Do you see the color of this?
It's kind of a pink amber.
It's kind of a pink amber for you, perhaps, but it definitely was more orangish, reddish headlamp, but it was so big and perfectly cylindrical, circular, I should say, that it was like, what am I looking at? Like, what is this? But it lit up enough. Like I said, it kind of lit up and then just disappeared. When I radioed to Bill and I asked him, did you turn on a headlamp? Are you in the woods? Are you not where you say you are? Nope, that's not me. I don't know what to tell you. We kept walking. We ended up meeting up with Bill. So it certainly was not him. It certainly was not his partner. At that point, I just let that aside. I didn't know what I was looking at. I always chalk that up as well as like the little red dots. And my eyes are playing tricks on me. That was my gut reaction. So I didn't overthink it, I think, at the time. We decided to head back, go to where this guttural sound was. There was no pebble at that time when we were the 5 of us. There was not a growl at the time when we were the 5 of us. And we finally passed that threshold where we said, okay, this is about the area where it should be. But now we're at a meadow. We're at this meadow and at this kind of like juncture where you're at this path. You are safe on this side. There's this meadow that had an incline, right to the left from where we were crossing. The moon was striking this meadow perfectly. You could see the other side. You're only going into more forest. And it was kind of the thought that, okay, we're going to continue this hike across this meadow. We get about halfway, and then Bill says something to Alex's question before that actually made me think, what am I doing? You get to these points when you're in the woods alone in the dark, even if you are with 4 other grown men. What am I doing here? And he says, listen, I got to stop y'all. If we get bluff charged, do 2 things. Sit down and don't look this thing in the face. That's a lot to take in for a first-time novice person going out looking for Bigfoot, right? Alex, to your question, it made me think of, okay, I have to acknowledge the fact that there's this creature out here that plenty of folks in science, current day science doesn't believe or exist. And I also have to acknowledge that, sit down calmly and not look it in the face. I just simply said, sure, okay. Like, I can't guarantee you that. But okay, let's go ahead. Like, let's just say we're going to go ahead with this. Now what, right? We all kind of agreed, without signing anything at that time in the middle of this prairie, we said, we're going to go ahead. Although we did sign waivers, so it's on us. We're going to cross into this, go past the threshold of this prairie. We're going to go into the next set of woods. We get into this next set of woods. Bill, out of almost nowhere, whips out this like claves, like wooden cowbell with like a little hammer.
Yeah.
As I might have told you, Doug. And so we go 10, 20 feet into this next forest. He lets out this big, like, clock thing. And we waited. Nothing happens within 20 seconds. But at the end of that 20 seconds, there was a snap and a crash and a like cracking, crunching, leaves shimmering all the way down, hitting other leaves, hitting other branches of this tree, getting what, again, sounds like in the middle of darkness, a break. Crack, crack, crunch, 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 crunch. It stops, falls down. And go ahead. You had a question?
How big of a tree was it?
I think when we went back there the next day, the diameter was maybe that, if that makes sense. So like 2 to 3 inches. Not huge, but enough to make a point, right?
Yeah.
And what was super interesting about that crunch was in New Mexico, funny enough, and I didn't know this at the time, but there are mountain cattle. This mountain cattle comes rushing out. It was a literal stampede, to the point where I didn't know what was happening. And actually, and I'll get sentimental for a second. I actually reached back for my dad to grab his hand because I wasn't quite sure what we were experiencing. And I didn't know if this was it for us. So I try to reach back for him to grab his hand. And we just see all these like shadowy cattle come out of the forest. But because the moon was on this prairie, we see them rushing. And it was like 30, 40 cattle, grown cattle.
And they're panicked.
They're gone. They are like not having it. And it was at the time, and there's this other gentleman. I don't know his name. It's probably best, but the fellow with Bill had the only thermal, monocular scope thing. He's like, oh yeah, there's the cattle. I see them. It's cattle. They're running. And I'm like, forget the cattle. What spooked them? I almost wanted to rip this off this guy's neck to be like, let me see what's happening. So they got spooked, and exactly once they left, the same sound that I heard the first night of crunch, 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 going down further away, and it just almost kind of like it just walked away. It just walked away.
Was the crunching coming from where the cattle kind of came?
No, this was where the tree got knocked down. The cattle was gone. They had left.
So, but the footsteps were coming from when the tree went down.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. To the point where this crunching, walking, again, buzzword bipedal sound, just crunch, 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 crunch. But it was I'll try to reenact like the frequency, crunch, crunch, crunch. I mean, it's burned into my brain, so that's the tempo that I recollect, was very lumbrous, very just whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. But you could hear
so it had a very slow frequency. A step frequency was very big. And generally, the bigger the animal, Kevin, of course, the slower it's going to walk.
But also not like crunch, crunch, crunch. Like it was not jogging away. It wasn't running away, unless this thing was 20 feet tall and that was its run. But it was just casual. Like, I did what I had to do. Hopefully you don't go past this. That way, again, these are all the interpretive messages and signals that I had of, okay, we're done. That's it. Like, we can't follow this thing anymore. The next day we did go back. We did supposedly find the tree. Candidly, there were other trees knocked down. It was a little hard to distinguish what was what, but we think we pinpointed it. Again, about 2-3 inch diameter tree.
Do you remember the type of tree?
I'm not good with genuses of trees. But small maple.
Okay.
What
type of trees kind of made these forests up? I've never done research in that area of New Mexico.
Great question. I mean, there are pines. There are standard, almost like what I would say like is a maple, or like a standard like yard tree.
So there's deciduous trees like oak trees and maple and
perhaps some birch.
How about birch and maple?
Yeah, birch. Yeah,
and aspen. Aspen.
Yeah, perhaps. My fiance could tell you probably more about different trees. I can't. And again, it's all about that research, right? That you do. To find out what kind of habitat or that these things could be living in.
What about one last question? Then you got to go on with your story. Sorry.
No.
Any water sources nearby? Streams, creeks, rivers, ponds, swamps.
I think there. I mean, these were all kind of more mountain. Mountain, big hill. But it also had just rained as like the time that we were showing up there, which also made it made us a little weary of traveling in, because there was these like runoff, we were afraid of like mudslides, to put it that way. So there was certainly water in the area, and I think, but no like waterfalls that we saw, no creeks that I saw. Rivers necessarily, but if cattle are there, then there has to be a water source somewhere that they're even familiar with.
Well, the fact there's trees, forests.
I mean, and it was pretty lush. I mean, nothing was like rotted per se.
Okay.
And this valley was like green. I mean, it was green, like little sprouts of grass in this valley, or this prairie is what I would call it.
Okay.
So I mean, there was definitely water sources, but nothing like here's a pond or here's your creek, something
Right.
like that.
And would you describe where you were in a valley?
Not necessarily, because we were on one side of the mountain. It's just so heavily forested that you couldn't really tell if you were in a valley or not. But what I could say is then the next day when we did try to track this tree down, this mountain or hill just went straight down to another like 45. I mean, and when I heard this walking, if this person or whatever is a walking 2-footed, I don't know, maybe you always kind of play these things back in your mind and say, I don't know what else walks on 2 feet besides us and like a Bigfoot, but whatever goes crunch, like 2 feet, this went down and it just disappeared. Like the noise kind of faded away, and it made sense because this mountain kind of just went down and into other mountains and valleys.
Yeah. So you were definitely in some kind of an alpine, more or less an alpine forest.
Yeah, I mean, it was
on the wet side of a mountain.
Yeah, there were trees, but it's hard to say. There were other trees kind of like knocked down too. I don't know if that water. I can't tell you if that water percentage of fall makes a tree live or not, and that's why there's so many living or standing or falling. I don't know. But there's cattle there. They have to have a water source. So it is Bigfoot, if at all intelligent, would follow them to follow that water source. If they could find it, it could find it. That's my, 1 and 1 makes 2.
Was this, last question, was this BLM land by any chance?
I don't think so. No, because, well, I take that back. Possibly. This was we were told this is a very secretive area.
Okay.
Don't share this area. Don't talk about this area.
Okay.
Could that be in the organization's way of saying we just want to keep this to ourselves? Or could that be, we can't let this be known that we're in this area because such and such? But I will tell you this, it's not a part of a state park where you check in. We didn't check in at all.
Yeah.
We just pulled up. There's a couple of areas where like it was flat. That's where you put up your tent.
All right, go on. So you hear that. So the last thing we left off is the walking down the hill.
Down the hill. That was kind of the climax, if you will, of the weekend. The next day, we tried to kind of go out, do some more looking around. It hailed that night, or it hailed that even that like afternoon. So it just wasn't, that was kind of it. We didn't stay much after that. Then other expeditions led my dad and I to Colorado, to outside of Houston State Park in Texas, where again I did see this reddish orangish light come on, turn off, but it was the size of about a Cadillac tail light, which was quite large. But even further away, but yet so large that I remember in this time we came somewhat prepared. We had audio, and I even have it myself on tape saying, who has their Cadillac in the forest? Who's driving in the woods right now? Yeah. Like it was beyond me to understand or comprehend what I'm looking at. We came across a couple of structures in Texas where we called it a cathedral. This thing was just such a woven nest of tree limbs and twigs and things like that. I will call out that, unfortunately, someone took it upon themselves to mark, if you will, this cathedral thing with their own bodily fluid, which I thought was inappropriate. But that's to say that if they're trying to elicit a response, I think us just maybe walking through was enough of a message that, hey, we found this, right? So be respectful. I think it'll PSA. The other thing that I heard about the Sam Houston area was, and this gets a little on a interesting track, where there was this one camper who went out there, and this is what was told for me by the organization, same one. But I found it super interesting because there's no stories of this. You can't really Google something like this, and I've tried. But there was this one story of a camper who was set up there. And I don't know if he was looking for Bigfoot or just camping out there or what was happening, but his camp got completely ravaged. And the FBI actually had gone and investigated this site of this ravaged camp. And in fact, this man went missing afterwards. So what I thought was interesting, what was kind of proposed as the idea, is that perhaps a Bigfoot ravaged this camp.
Yeah.
And took this individual, whatever, or he ran, or he didn't make it when he ran, or whatever it was, but he disappeared. But his camp is there and it's destroyed. You can't Google something like that. You can't really, you take that story because that's what's been passed down. And it was like, oh man, that's terrifying to hear that there might be this creature that just ravages the camp and like leaves the person missing. That was the big focus point for why we were there at
Right.
Sam Houston.
Was that involved with Kumbo? Is that his name? It's kind of a guide down there.
This was with her name's escaping me, but we mentioned her. I don't know if I want to say her name, but she does the drawings.
Oh, I know it is. Yeah, with the BFRO.
That's right.
Yep.
So that was kind of why we were down there. I mentioned Colorado. Nothing really happened in Colorado with this BFR organization. But when I was there with my buddy, who lived there, him and I, we decided to meet up, try to do at least like a night or two of some hot spots that he had figured out. Unfortunately, I don't remember exactly where this was, but it was in like a gold mining town, if that helps at all, in Colorado, where this was maybe about 3 p.m. during the day. And we got a whoop that was very interesting because it almost kind of had like a to this whoop, like
It rolled its W.
It rolled its R's. It rolled its W. And I was like, the heck was that? And my buddy, of course, kind of like comes hustling out of the woods. And I'm like, tell me, dude, you can't, like, that's not you, right? Because you're breaking the rules if that was you. And it's just like, that's why I'm like, I hustled out of there because it was like 20 feet away from me. And I'm like, that sounded like 20 feet away from me. So like, what are you talking about?
So somebody had just mentioned, sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but somebody had just mentioned, Alex, that video of that ravaged camp is on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
You can look for it while we listen to Kevin's story continue. Sorry.
No, please stop me anytime, questions anytime. I don't want to seem like I'm rambling. Then more happened. So Cliff Barrickman, he at one time he hosted expeditions on his own, and he was kind of setting all this stuff up as well for Oregon expeditions. So of course reached out to him. My dad and I immediately flew over there with all of our gear in a big Christmas tree bag, because that's the only bag that can carry all your gear. And at that point, our first expedition, there was quite a bit happening there. And most notable to me was when we were out, again, kind of the first night, Doug, you'll be interested to hear perhaps that, boy, there was just satellites or white lights just flying, but like steadily across the sky, super close. We almost like stared and watched the sky more than we did any like Bigfooting that night. But it was the second night where we decided to go down again a very narrow but fully pined, as you can imagine in Oregon, path. And we were all, and I was doing my, night vision, monocular thing, thermal, and just again, PSA for thermal. If you don't have one, if you do have one, you might know that when you try to looking in that thing, it's super awesome. But as soon as you take that away from your eye, you are more blind than you were using it. So that's what at that point in time, I might as well have had my eyes closed. And I'm still kind of like following the steps of my dad and the next person and the next person and Cliff's leading. And then we heard this like, what sounded like almost like an R2-D2 in the woods. Like this weird like thing. And I actually, this was again a very very honest moment for myself was when I got nervous because that was such a strange sound.
And you're sure it wasn't a beaver? They have kind of a high pitched.
I was told at the time from Cliff that this was a barred owl type of owl or something like that made a noise up in a tree. But what I internalized it as, we've disturbed a nest and there's a teenager making the alarm sound that we've disturbed this area. And it's kind of an interesting point. And I'll circle back to why I think that number one, that's what I felt initially, but then number two, why that actually came back later on. So we kind of did some more hiking and didn't really kind of catch anything else. And at this time I was on alert and I was very vulnerable actually at this point and just not feeling confident and like relaxed. Oh, we're going to go find a Bigfoot. Like at this point I felt, I crossed the threshold and I disturbed something that almost shouldn't, this veil that I was approaching. Take that for what it is. We decided to kind of come back. And at this point, again, there was no wind, there was no crickets, no flies, nothing like that, mosquitoes, nothing like that, but a solitary single tree. And it was just like, what this tree is moving. This tree is moving.
There's no wind.
No wind, and it was only this one tree. And we had my buddy from Colorado was there, and he gave a wood knock, and like still this tree just kept kind of swaying. We decided to all kind of more or less surround this tree, and this is at the point where my dad was actually thermaling, and he was trying to lean so far back, and he was getting images, but it was so far up, but it was blobby, but so high up in the tree that it was almost like I might as well just lay down. That's how far back he was trying to go up this tree, and it was so high, and we were so close, and all that. But what was nuts, and again, I have this on recording of myself saying, it's blowing bubbles. It's blowing bubbles. And what I meant by that was it's blowing raspberries. For many of you who have children, I'm about to be a first-time dad. But it's the fact that, like, thank you. It's the idea that
really, you're hearing this?
I'm hearing it, and we actually have it on recording.
Wow.
It's a little fuzzy, but one goes up. This, like, if you can picture like a wave form going up. And I was like, it's blowing bubbles like this. It's blowing bubbles. Like, I just kept repeating it.
Jeez.
We were with a woman at the time, and she was one out of like, I think we were maybe with, there's one woman, myself, Cliff, Buddy, my dad, maybe another person, but like, we said, okay, all the guys are going to go down the path, and this one woman's going to sit there and just kind of talk nice to whatever could be up this tree, sitting cross-legged with a couple of toys. Hi, it's me. We're just going to sit here. Are you okay? Like very motherly. And meanwhile, I'm with my therm, like, of course, like, oh, I'm going to catch the mom. She's going to be pissed. Like, well, something's going to happen. Nothing other than that really happened that night, and like the bubble stopped, and
Jeez.
we kind of walked away. I regret that, because there was another separate group that was doing their own thing. We should have called them. Everyone hold hands around this tree, shine your light up in this tree. Very aggressive, perhaps, but it was just like we didn't do enough. And I think there are circumstances perhaps that you both have been involved in where you're like, yeah, I should have done X, Y, Z. Why didn't we? I don't know, but we did.
Yep. That's my middle name, regrets.
Yeah. So that was all that kind of happened that night. Third night, I was with my dad, and I were with Jeff Meldrum. We kind of hung back, and there was 3 groups. We were in the back group. The furthest group said that they caught kind of like these, I mean, I think they had thermal, but like these blob images, 2 sets of blob images, like run across this pond, kind of scurry across. They could definitely see this. The funny, interesting point of that third night, my dad and I and Jeff are kind of sitting on a log talking. And then this red light shows up, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This red light is showing up again. Like, what is happening with this red light? And it's just going back and forth. And even Jeff chuckles, and he's like, I can't explain this. I don't know what's going on.
How close?
Well, 40 yards, if that.
40 yards.
But
compared to a small car taillight? Same color?
Smaller. Almost like a headlight being passed back and forth between 3 people, which is what it was.
Oh, you
That's
did
what
find out?
we did
Really?
radio in and said, is someone, like, who has a red light on? And it was the next group who said, yeah, we're passing it back and forth. But we all chuckled because it was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness, because it was just passing back and forth. And it was seamless. And I was like, I don't know what to make of that. Then the last one, Doug, that I will say is a couple of different times going back to Oregon to the Mount Hood area. This time it was just me, my buddy, and another friend who lives out in that area. And we did our own thing. It was 3. I candidly think that 3 is truly a magic number, and I don't know why. And you might have heard that, like, oh, Bigfoot can't count or whatever like that. How do you know? I kind of disagree. I don't know. You can get into it. But 3 seems to be very special. And so it was at that point where we were out at night. Nothing really happened. And as we're walking back towards camp, we get this check, like snap. And it was way up in the trees. And we could only surmise that it was a rock because it hit. You could tell that it was coming towards you, like the trajectory. Snap. And I was like, okay. And that was it. That's all we had. The next morning, we decided to look at a spot where a buddy might have seen something kind of run up a hill. There might have been a track. There might not have been. But as we were investigating, one of us had to take off to go to work, but then it was just 2 of us. And as we're kind of investigating, Sam, like, crack, this rock getting thrown, or what seemed to be a projectile getting thrown and hitting a log and just dropping. And that was it. That kind of ended ended the experience as to this point. Perhaps something this past weekend in the Wisconsin woods, which is the latest, where Levi, you had mentioned.
Yeah, were you there that night?
I wasn't,
Oh.
but he did mention that there he could see like heat signatures in these acorns.
Yeah, right. Yeah, apparently some of them were glowing.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting about our time in the woods there was, and this is, what would you call that, Doug? Central Wisconsin, near Wisconsin Dells.
Yeah, it's actually an amazing area.
Yeah,
what amazed me more than anything was the amount of old growth trees that were in that state forest.
yeah,
There's a lot of old growth in there. It was really pretty.
yeah.
A lot of white pine, which is rare. It's all been logged, but there was a ton of white pine.
Yeah, I mean, and it sounded like, I mean, sometimes it sounded kind of like acorn rain, like it was just one after another. It was just kind of dropping, but then you'd get these large, like crash thunk, almost as if it was like, I don't know, bigger than a walnut. I mean, almost like a fruit. Some of these actually making a substantial thud to the where, like, I don't know if the forest makes this much noise during the day that we're just not aware of, but boy, it was thuddy.
The thing is, when the forest does its own thing, when they're dropping fruit and acorns and whatever they're dropping, you just kind of don't have this feeling. You just, it's just the forest.
Yeah.
But when you're out in the middle of the night and you're walking around at 3 a.m. and you're hearing things that seem to be heading towards you,
well,
the human body, I mean, you just know it's not normal.
Yeah, and I guess there was one time, so we were in a group and we're kind of trying to do like this 3x5. We're kind of splitting into different groups, but 3x5, 5x3, trying to do this leapfrog routine, and you could kind of hear these larger thunks happen. And one happened with just my dad and myself, where it was just like, we actually had like, maybe we should turn back, because that was just such a substantial thunk.
Well, first off, pine cones don't make a thunk. They'll make a little trinkle when they calm down.
You can kind of tell a pine cone.
You can tell a pine cone.
This was,
and acorns, they're so light. They don't make much of a sound either.
So we did this thing where, one group was waiting in the back, and then we would radio, okay, now your turn, go. Levi would kind of hide somewhere, and we would pass. So we passed him, myself, my dad, and this other younger kid. And this was maybe the most intriguing part of the night, where it was like it seemed like a 4-footed animal, but like you could hear the weight in this, like getting up and trying to like trot off or run, to the point where it caught me off guard, and I told my dad and this younger kid, hey guys, like, hold on a sec. Like, and they were about 10 feet ahead, so I had to like kind of catch up to them. I thermed and really held there for about 20 minutes, just kind of therming and seeing what would happen. And what was interesting was there was these 2 deer that were actually grazing, but coming back to where the noise was, to where I said, boy, that's kind of peculiar. You think that if something spooked, if it were these 2 deers, why would they come back? And yet at the same time, if it spooked this animal enough, or whatever it might have been, like, it would have spooked this other deer to go away. But it didn't. It just they kind of kept on their own path towards us, in fact. And I never saw anything more substantial than that, but just like this thuddy kind of get up momentum and kind of get out of the area where I was. And this was, again, seeming to be about 10 feet, 15 feet away from me, but in the woods. And actually I remember kind of like looking down. I mean, this was more of a level area at the time, but like looking down to be like, oh, this is more like chest height down, but yet thuddy. So that was kind of like the last greatest peculiar thing that I've experienced in the woods.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you. Well, first off, I was going to mention Mike Hunt. He mentioned pine cones, and I completely forgot about green pine cones. If they're green and you got a squirrel cutting them off, generally they won't drop. But if a green pine cone drops, they're pretty heavy. They're full of a lot of water.
Mm-hmm.
It's when they're dry they don't, they have no weight to them. So Mike is absolutely right on that. That's a good comment, Mike.
Yeah, I guess I would. Do they make more of a thuddy sound than a dry?
A green one would. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because they've got all that water weight.
They're the same size though, right?
Yeah, they're about the same size, but they're 4 times heavier.
Yeah, that, I mean, and again, I'm not discrediting that. So it just seemed like, boy, I mean, what I would liken it to is like a small apple falling from a tree and making a thunk. I mean, that's the kind of
right. And they may have been rocks that you were actually hearing.
Yeah, and we looked on the ground, but we didn't see any like thermal heat signatures on a rock. I mean, nothing like that. But not
takes a little longer to get heat buildup on a rock.
Yeah, exactly.
I've done quite a bit of experiments, and rocks don't heat up too quick.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if this was a quick throw up and toss and get out of here, like, yeah, we wouldn't have seen that. Yeah.
Well, in all of your research, what's your opinion on Bigfoot? And what do you think of the potential of Wisconsin as a research area?
I am very open to, I'm kind of as taking Jeff Meldrum's stance on it. Like, I don't believe because there's enough scientific data to show that these things do exist. So it's not really a question of belief. But so yes, they're out there, I would say. The lights, and I think we talked again, Doug, and you might have to help me with this terminology, but correlation doesn't mean causation. Is that correct? Is that the term?
Yeah.
So I don't know if these lights necessarily mean that that's what's coming from
Bigfoot
or Bigfoot did it. But
I think it's causation doesn't equal correlation.
There it is. Yes, you corrected me again. But at the same time, there's enough folks that experience this as well, to where I think it's very interesting that it just happens to be at the same time, perhaps. These little red dots. I've heard stories that, this is the Bigfoot eye shine and there are these little red dots. And that's what it seemed like, though. These like one little dots, like one little eye shine peeking out from beneath the tree. But there's so many of them that they're all kind of doing this peak move. Or that there's two because they're doing this.
Right.
It seems like multiple.
Yep. I saw it one time up in Ontario, just once. Don't know what it was.
Yeah.
I was actually looking through binoculars because I had seen these red eyes or red glows. Grabbed the binoculars, didn't have a good pair. It was a crappy pair, but yeah, they could have been eyes that were peeking behind trees.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where it's, you hear some of these explanations. Oh, there's kind of a greenish eye shine or whatever it might be. I mean, mine, all of them, the ones that I've experienced, even these red lights, are kind of this amberish, orangish light. And to get back to your question, I mean, yes, I think they are real. They do exist. I don't know to what extent what we're talking about. I am always open-minded to say, I don't know if it's a realm thing, if it's a UFO thing, alien thing, just a straight up animal thing, Nephilim thing. Like, there's so many of these theories. But all I can say is I got growled at, a tree got pushed down like within yards of us. I heard walking. Those are all physical traits that we can at least say, stamp it. That's an earth thing. But at the same time, I don't want to discredit anyone else who's had any other type of experience. But I try not to go down that route. Many of you might consider it like a woo. You might hear that term, but it's weird enough. I don't know if we need to add the woo to it to make it any more weird. But yet go for it. Right. I mean, that's the part of the fun of talking to friends around a fire.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I will say you guys were extremely professional. I just met you guys, but I was
Yeah.
very impressed by how professional and you were serious about what you were doing. Just stayed on task.
Yeah, that's. I thank you. I appreciate the compliment. We've done this for a while, and I think there are avenues for first-time parents, novice folks to, first-time parents to bring their kids out. There's venues for that. There's forms for that. There's novice folks. There's forms for that. Um, in the diehards, like if you have a friend who you want to go with, there's nothing too tricky about just kind of going into a specific area that's got a little bit of water, some vegetation around it, some animal eatings around it, and like see what happens.
Yeah.
Um,
You don't have to be in the middle of nowhere. That's
Yeah.
for darn sure.
Yeah.
I would rate that area in Wisconsin. I mean, it had the woods, water, and hills. It had everything.
Yeah.
Just a beautiful area and forests as far as, anything. I mean,
Yeah.
millions of miles of forest.
Yeah. And there's kind of for us who live in Wisconsin, I think there's kind of this theory, this working theory that Wisconsinites don't really talk about these experiences too much.
Yeah.
If you do go to certain organization websites or tracking websites or mapping project websites, they're all kind of pulling from the same, I think, database.
Yeah.
And just Wisconsin's not really the top one. But what's super interesting is that Minnesota is up there, Illinois is up there, Ohio's up there, perhaps even Indiana, Michigan, and the UP. I mean, these are all areas that are forming a circle around Wisconsin, and yet we're missing some data. So it's the running theory that either Wisconsinites just don't talk about it, or there's nothing here. And I kind of think it's the latter.
Yeah. Well, I know the older generation in Wisconsin, they're so conservative.
Yeah.
You talk to somebody above 55, they're not telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they may have had numerous sightings, they're not talking.
Now, is it because they're in denial, or is it because they're just afraid to?
They're afraid to be, teased. They live in small towns.
Yeah.
They don't want to wake up with their, tree toilet papered.
Yeah.
What about your peer group, Kevin? I mean, are you open with all your friends and your family about this stuff, or?
They know. Everyone knows. I mean, of course, I go camping with my dad. I got a cousin who's very into it, and he couldn't believe that I had all these contacts, per se. But yeah, they're open to it. And I guess it kind of comes down to your individualism and your individualistic values that you have. Is this a weird thing or is it not? Do I want to be open about this or not? And that's where, for me personally, you're not going to learn something if you don't share something perhaps about yourself.
Yeah.
So that's where just be as open and as you can be, so that someone else might be able to say, you know what, I'm going to be vulnerable. Since you're being vulnerable, you're being you, I'll share something that maybe I wouldn't necessarily even share to my sibling or whomever.
Have you shared some of your stories with, let's say, some of your peer group where you weren't expecting a positive reaction and you were surprised that they were more open than you thought they'd be?
I think more or less, and it's perhaps the people who I'm attracted to or are attracted to me, where we don't really get on one another and say, "Oh, that's ridiculous." Like, come on, what are you thinking? Like, maybe that's just because I don't hang around those types of people. But for the most part, people have been accepting and have said, and funny enough, Doug, like they say, okay, now that you mention it, this happened to me when I was young, right? And that's kind of
gives them permission.
That's right. And so it's cool to share. And I think raising my firstborn, I will try to instill the same kind of values into her. And of course, I've got some Sasquatch puppets and things like that like stories and things like I just want the next generation of whoever that is to just be open to the possibilities. And Doug, like we talked about, we just don't know. We don't know what they truly drink, what they truly eat, where they truly come from, why they're truly like even interested in us when they do show themselves. Like there's plenty, and this has gone on for, centuries. So I think it's just a really interesting topic to get into. And frankly, like, I think it keeps that, human spirit alive of like mystery. It's mystery.
Yeah. Well, it brings out the kid in everybody.
Yeah.
Because, without believing in any mysteries, God, I couldn't imagine my life just not wondering about things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's what gets me up in the morning.
Yeah.
Thinking
But-
what you might see, what you might experience.
Yeah.
We know so little about our planet. Even the forest. We think we know so much about the forest and the ecosystem. We don't know anything.
Yeah. I mean, and some of that unknowing, and this is, I say this thing, it was told to me once, turn worry into wonder. If you're worried about the dark, well, then wonder about it. Wonder what could be in the dark, and don't be afraid of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps it's cliche, but at the same time, it's like, it turns kind of those creepy, like woo feelings into, actually, let's talk about it. Let's investigate. Let's put a name to a gorilla that was only discovered like 100 years ago, right? I mean, it's truly one of those things.
One of the things I noticed about those or the area that we were in, it was quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was no noise. There was no insect noise, nothing.
Do you liken that, Doug, to activity, or perhaps like, no, there's nothing going to be here?
It was just dead. I mean, I just didn't sense any movement of any animals. I don't know. I really don't know what to think of it. It was odd. It was odd. Struck me as odd.
Yeah, where we were, squirrels were everywhere. You could see mice everywhere. I saw a deer, even deer and two deer grazing together, and one deer run off, and they were still grazing. There was enough activity to where, if I liken it to a New Mexico experience or an Oregon experience where there's this tray swing and there was no noise, like no noise is kind of where it's at, to me. But to each their own.
Yeah, I don't know what it meant. I mean, it's different every time you do a trip.
Yeah.
I just noticed it stood out to me how quiet it was out there.
Yeah. It was still, I mean, if you were in the woods with us, it would have probably been different. Were you because you kind of stayed to the outer trails, correct? Like the outer.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And we would zip pretty quick, about 9-10 miles an hour
Mm-hmm.
for a couple of miles, and we'd stop, get off, we'd go in some place into the woods and just chill, not talk, nothing, no flashlights. And it was just, every time we did, it was dead quiet. Yeah.
I mean, I'm seeing William say here, like, if it's when the forest's quiet, they're there. Like that's kind of my belief. But what's interesting in that point is, again, my experience, and I can only speak for myself and my experience, is that like they'll let you know they're there by like a pebble toss or a rock toss or or a growl or whatever it might be. They'll make themselves known if you get close enough.
I've only heard this really weird growl one time when I was relieving myself at the base of Mount St. Helens.
Why did you? Well, so you asked me that before they were relieving themselves, and I was like, "Who would be?" I'd have never even heard anyone relieve themselves and let out this. Like I've never.
Well, if you walk away, if you're with a few people at an expedition, and you walk away, 40 yards, and you're all of a sudden while you're peeing, you hear a growl right next to you, and we're talking feet, and man, you talk about a chill. It was on that same trip during the day we went to Ape Canyon. And we left our driver there. Yeah. It was like the camp manager.
Yeah.
And he was there alone. And during the day, he had a growl happen next to him during the day, and he quit and he flew home.
Yeah.
No warning. He just said, "I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I'm not staying here ever." It's like, I'm gone. And he grabbed our rental car and left.
There's one, you're mentioning something that's I'm just kind of now interested in is like, I don't know what's with the peeing or with the marking or whatever this is, but someone did that in Texas. I had someone even do that in Oregon when the tray was swinging. They said, "Hey, I gotta go take a pee real quick," and like I don't know what that means or signifies. And this was one of the leaders in Oregon, by the way, who's like, "I'm gonna go pee," and like it was like, "Well, why right now? There's something happening. Why are you gonna really?" And to what you're mentioning is like they're hearing this while they relieve themselves, and it's like, I don't know why. Why is that a thing?
It's a territorial thing, possibly. You're peeing in their territory.
Sure.
There was something really interesting that happened up at Snellgrove, up in Canada, in Ontario. There was a spot off the porch because after we started having activity at Snellgrove, nobody would walk to the outhouse at night anymore. So if you had to pee, you went on the front porch,
right,
and you would go to the corner and you would pee off the corner. Well, one night we're sleeping, and we hear kind of a bunch of walking on the porch, and then we hear peeing right in the spot we pee. But and it was like, and after like 5 minutes of it, you're like, that ain't a person.
It was like, when it's a fire hose versus
it was like trickle. A fire hose, but it was right where we peed.
I mean, I understand the marking idea of that, but what I think is interesting is we take it that as marking your territory.
Well, other animals pee too. I mean,
they mark their territory, but like
cannons do, cats do, bears do.
But I'm always careful on putting our own interpretation.
You're right, of course. We don't know.
Creature, no. We don't know really what's going on in their head.
No, I can only infer, Kevin, that that's probably what's going on.
I mean, is that to say that I've got the bigger like gun in the hunt here? Is that is that what's happening?
Could be.
I mean, I'll buy it. I
would try it. I mean, it's a good thing to do on purpose. We've done it on purpose before, and we've had action happen. We've had rocks thrown at us. Even my son had a rock. Damn near took his head off.
Yeah,
he was peeing one time. Yep.
Yeah, I remember that story.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually spooky because I was standing behind him, and I saw the rock hit, and it hit like a bullet right by his head.
Right.
You know, I missed him by a couple inches.
And they aim. If the theory is they can't really count, well, okay, they can't count, but boy, can they aim.
Yeah, I agree. Well, they would probably use rocks for hunting, I would think.
Yeah, I would imagine.
I mean, why not? What a great way to take a grouse down, or a pheasant, or a bird, or a turkey, you know?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's rock throwing, stick throwing, or just simply catching up to something and doing a spinal, a twisted fracture of a bone, and that's how they get at it.
Well, the thing is, Kevin, I like a grouse. Let's take a grouse. All you got to do is stun the animal for a few seconds, and you can grab it.
Yeah.
When we used to go grouse hunting, we used to use bow and arrow, and we would just use these spring tip arrows. So it wouldn't penetrate the bird. It would just stun them for a few minutes. Or a few seconds. And you could just go up to them and grab them.
Yeah. That's all it takes, right?
Yeah.
There's other, speaking of food, I think is what we're kind of getting at. Like, I've always kind of wanted to dig in more to, I would love to hear from a primatologist of North America and just to understand the amount of food that a primate would need to consume if they are 1,400 pounds, whatever, and what areas provide that. Granted, gorillas live off bananas or bamboo or whatever it might be, and like they're cool with it.
Yeah.
That's a topic that I've always been interested in, is like, what are they eating? I mean, with me being into nutrition, I've got
so much. All right, Kevin, I got one for you.
Yeah.
Guess how much a silverback gorilla eats a day in pounds?
30.
You were close. It's 40 pounds of food a
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. But what
That's
is
a lot.
what is it? Was that just all bananas and bamboo, or what are they
It's
eating?
probably a lot of bamboo and plant material. Ferns.
Is that right, Alex?
Yeah.
Let me see.
He's gonna Google it. Okay.
The only food, Kevin, that's around like in Wisconsin, 24/7, 365 days a year is meat.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. Yeah.
Because, early in the spring, even everything cellulose, all the plant material, there's no food value at all, very little. In the fall, everything turns to cellulose. In the forest, except meat.
Yeah.
It's got to be the, deer. I would think the ungulates would provide the most steady, food source. And they're increasing. Don't you agree? We have more deer now than probably
Probably
50 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a
Right.
hunter by any means, but dang, do we have deer? I mean, I can't drive 5 minutes down the road without
Yeah.
almost hitting a deer all the time.
I always tell people, well, you're young, but when I was young, a kid, 5 years old, 6 years old, there were no deer. Like there were none.
Mm-hmm.
They were overhunted. It would actually make the newspaper if there was a deer sighting. Yeah,
That's incredible. Yeah, I have not heard that, but
there were no wild turkeys, no grouse, no pheasants,
oh man.
no raptors.
Well, I think what's interesting, Doug, though, is that all those animals are becoming so acclimated to human activity.
Yes.
They can come within feet. You'll even see it on the golf course. For those who go golf, you'll hit a ball. I mean, you'll geese don't move at all anymore.
Nope.
Deer will just kind of gingerly walk across. You have turkey. You've got woodchuck. I mean, there's just so much for them to snap up if they wanted to.
Yeah, geese are so stubborn now because they get harassed and they pull up in someone's property and they'll toss rocks at them or whatever to shoo them away.
Yeah.
Geese are just like, the hell with you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're indifferent. But once again, what a great food source for a Bigfoot.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, and something's got to give them protein. Yeah, protein, fats, carbs, calories. I mean, those are the four kind of like food groups to substantiate any type of living organism, right? So,
Kevin's one of those people, Alex. Hasn't formed too many opinions yet, but he's thinking about all these things. I can tell you think about all of them, but you haven't. And I'm just, my opinions are, they're all up to be wrong, every one of them. So I tell myself, this is by inference what I think, but I could be dead wrong.
yeah, and Alex, tell me if I'm wrong. But it's just the idea of, I don't want my experiences to impede on someone else's experiences. If I say, I didn't see any UFOs, but someone else is saying, I saw this Sasquatch came out of a UFO and it had a briefcase around its wrist with a, whatever it was. And it was
with
like
a key.
With a key. And he took the key out of his, glowing head. It's like, I haven't experienced that, but
you don't want to tell them they're wrong. You're just saying, here's what I've seen so far. Here's what I've experienced.
But as we said, Doug, like, we just don't know. And that's what I said on my last opportunity to be on a podcast is just be open. We don't know.
It's the best.
And, at that point, your opinions should be shown through your experiences, perhaps, and the way you talk about your experiences. I see some chatting going around about like experiences, whether to believe it or not. You know what? It's not yours to say. It's their experience. It's their life. It's their opportunity.
Yep.
So,
it's very disrespectful to tell somebody you don't believe them when their experience very well might be 100% true. I don't think anything's more hurtful than actually having something happen or seeing something and somebody going, you're just making it up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of those experiences are scary. I mean, if they're being told, I saw this thing. I mean, you see these other kind of Bigfoot Sasquatch programs. I had this experience. This man from this organization told me not to talk about it, but I have to be in the shadows, change my voice. Those are very, I mean, if that is a real story, that is a scary, real story. That's this person's kind of putting themselves on the line. And even for me, myself, feeling that I'm on this podcast and sharing my voice and my face and sharing who I am and where I'm from, like that's a very vulnerable move to be in, or a position to be in.
It is. And it takes courage.
Yeah, but it's coming from a place of wanting others to feel okay to share their stories, and like this is the only way that anything gets discovered or discussed or makes better for perhaps maybe not us, the human race, but maybe perhaps this other being that's living and is trying to cope with things that are happening around them, right? So
yeah. Have you thought about how many there may be, like in Wisconsin? Let's just talk about Wisconsin. Have you ever thought about it? And what was your kind of guess?
You know, are you familiar with that, like, I don't know if it's black bear or brown bear statistic of for every one black bear there, or for every, is that right? For every for every 500, I think it is, black bear, there's like one Sasquatch in that, you know, radius mileage. And
well, there's probably about, I would think, 40,000 black bears in Wisconsin. You know, so what is 500 divided by 40 is 8. So what's,
Alex, do the math on that. What is that?
So 8 times 5 is 40. So there'd be 800 Sasquatches.
Was it 1 to 500? Did you say?
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be 800 Sasquatches in Wisconsin based on that formula. And then there would be 800 times 50, which would be probably too many.
Well, I mean,
I would think 1 per 5,000 would be
even if there's 50, right? In Wisconsin, if you're familiar with the area, boy, do we have a lot of corn farms, field farms, wheat farms, but somehow some will tell you that they're in the southern part of the Kettle Moraine. That's only like 20 miles of forest. If you get to the northern part of the Kettle Moraine, then there's maybe about 40 miles of forest, but it's still the idea that you're hopping. If I'm a Sasquatch, I'm going to have to hop through towns, farms, cities, and like just straight up like local wanderers and not be seen. That's even in my own state, dog. Like that was my skepticism. And so connecting with Levi, he said, you know what, come out, you know, see what we see, do this thing. And I was like, yeah, of course, got to, I want to. Is it possible? Yeah, totally. It's totally possible. Especially where we were with that. What is it called? Oh, Black Forest, is that right? Black Forest?
Black River?
Thank you. Is that, I think it's
something
Black
like
River.
that. Yeah.
Black River Falls. That's what it is, isn't it?
Black River Falls. Yep.
So, yeah, possible. I definitely want to get to Snell Grove, so I will take you up on that.
Yeah, let's go. No, I think you'd have a blast. You like to fish?
Yeah. You
got to do something today. So you know fish
what? I'll even bring my brother-in-law because he's actually in. He's more into the. I'll just leave out what he does, but he will definitely like to survey, if you will, that area, and he loves to fish. And so, like, yeah, let's go out there. I'm game.
Okay. Yep, you'd be the perfect person to go, Alex. No.
Why wouldn't Alex go? Alex, why wouldn't you go?
You've never been up there. You've never been up there. You're the only kid that's not been up there.
I've been up there once as a kid, right? Was that the same cabin?
No, you haven't.
The one where you coming on the float plane, right?
Oh, you did?
Yeah, but I was like 11.
Oh, okay. That was
forever ago.
Oh, that's right, because we took Grandma. Right? You, Blaine, and Grandma. Or was it just Blaine?
Joe
I don't think you went. Oh,
Joe
okay. Well, then you were there. All right, I'll give you credit. I'll give you one snow girl
Star,
credit.
1 star, and that's all you get.
Yeah, that's all you get.
But now
Well,
that I know about missing 411,
but we were doing no Bigfooting then. We've never had any experience up there. It was just fishing.
Yeah, it was just
Alex, what
All
you
right.
411?
you're aware of like David Pilates and like all the missing people, like the
Yeah, I it's just unfortunate. I think that's a different conversation for a different time. It's
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who knows? Well, we are out of time. Where can people connect with you if they want to?
Oh man, I'm a pretty what's the right term there? Not secretive guy. What am I trying to say there, Doug?
Private. You're a
private
private guy.
person. I'm a private person.
You don't even have a Facebook page.
I think I do. I don't know why no one can find me. That's another topic in and of itself. But
top secret.
yeah, I'm yeah. But
I know what. Everybody contact Levi.
There you go.
Levi Makovitz. If you need to get a hold of
There you
Kevin,
go.
that's how I got a hold of you. I contacted
exactly.
Levi.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the best way you'll probably find me is if you are out bigfooting with a group and you hear that K2 is going to be there. That's my field name is K2.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a stage name. It's just easier to distinguish between myself and my dad. He's K1. I'm K2.
Gotcha.
And so that way. But other than that, yeah, kind of with Levi. If Levi's more of a non-private person, then by all means,
everybody.
connect with him.
Just contact Levi
That's
Makovitz.
right. He's my publicist. Go to
Yes.
him. Other than that, I do have an Etsy account if you want to buy some Sasquatch t-shirts.
There we go.
Sasquatch, a beer tab handle or other things like that.
And let me guess, this money goes towards all your money that you've spent, so your wife lets you buy it.
This all goes at this point now, Doug. This is all going to go to the baby. So, yeah. But these are all it's
really cool.
My ideas and things like that. So,
cool.
Trying to dabble in it, and then soon I'll have some like resin things up there. I plan to have like a actual PG film model capture and like a resin, if that makes sense. So, some things coming up there.
And how is your store going on Etsy?
Oh, terribly.
Terribly. You're not a millionaire yet.
No, I'm not. But I've got a good show or gig going on, and it allows me to go bigfooting, meet, and have fun with you fellas. When you're out there, provide stuff like this. So it's just a case of just. If you dig what I produce, by all means, hit me up on Etsy. Let me know that the show helped you get to where the Etsy account. That's cool. I'll maybe hit you up with like a bit of a sale or something like that. But yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Thanks guys for putting that up.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Kevin. We really appreciate it. It was fun spending the weekend with you. And
yeah, man.
hopefully we can do it again, maybe next year.
Snell Grove. Let's do it.
Okay. We'll talk soon. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
I call you up in the middle of the night. Been bothered by dreams, ain't feeling alright. You give me comfort, say just give it some time. By the end of our talk, I'm feeling just fine. You and I will always know where we belong. This ain't no ordinary love we got going on. I'll pick you up in my 59 Ford. We head on down the road until we get bored. Just you and me and the sun and the wind. If the rain should start falling, we'll head on home again. Everybody else can see where we belong. Forever is one, and I'll wait. If if ever you should be in doubt. And I pray they never can pull us apart in the way. At the end of the world, together forever as one. And I'll wait if ever you should be